great to have you here. I mean, you were one of the 2 drivers ever driven that car back in 1999. So how was it for you today, you know, to be able to drive the car again after 25 years?
It was fantastic, Timo, to be honest, because as soon as you drive out onto the circuit, it takes you back 25 years. Just driving the car, feeling how it reacts. And the other thing is as well, having the people here that built it the first time, building it the second time for this special occasion. And it's not every time in your career, you know, you get the opportunity to have a 25-year anniversary with something as beautiful as this.
Yes. I mean, on a personal note, I was looking up to you guys back then. I could remember the car was standing here in '99. I was just a junior, 18 years old. I was standing in the corner watching, seeing everybody preparing that famous rollout. And I said to myself, I want to be in that car, you know, in the future. I mean, now it took 25 years, you know, to be close to that car. So it's a bit crazy. But can you recall the 3rd of November, 1999? What was your emotions back then driving that car? Because there were ambitions back then, right?
Yeah, it's very different to today. Because back then we were thinking about this car as the successor to the GT1, which had won Le Mans in '98. We were going back to race the competition, which was like Cadillac, it was also BMW and an Audi. And so it was really expectation. What was this new car going to be like? What was the first feeling going to be like? And Bob Wallach drove on the first evening, and it was wet and damp. It was a typical November day.
In Germany, you want to say?
It's a very Scottish day, shall we say.
Okay.
But it was not your ideal conditions. Yeah. And then the next day was dry, cold and dry. And my first feeling was it reacted. It was alive. The car, everything I did with it, it gave me something. And immediately it suited what I wanted out of it. It suited my style of driving. And that was also something I felt today, 25 years later, that characteristic's still there. Through the 2 kinks out the back, you can make it turn in, you can get onto it, it gives you confidence. And that's what I loved about the first run of a new car, because it gave me an impression what the future could look like. Unfortunately, with this one, we didn't get to see what the future could look like, but it was fantastic to run it again today.
So the potential was straight away feelable for you?
Yeah, for me, yes, clear. For clear, it was a big step in terms of the field feedback, but also the pure performance. It was quicker round here than we had ever done with the GT1. So we knew we had time in the pocket. The thing we didn't know was what the competition were going to do, but we knew that immediately it had something underneath it.
I mean, you won 1 year before, you won Le Mans overall in 1998 with the GT1 98. Completely different rules, completely different car. Can you talk us through what was the differences, you know, driving this prototype and the GT1?
The GT1 was a base of what was a supercar in those days. And now, they were supercars, no question, but it was a road car base. And this was a purpose-built racing car. Effectively, in the era, it was like a Formula One car, but with bodywork over the wheels. The other thing is the GT1, we had a gear lever, and this we had paddle shift.
Which was new at the time,
Which
right?
was very new at the time in this category. And because the gearbox was the weak link in Le Mans. And, you know, you had quite often teams that were having gearbox issues. So therefore, there was a lot of protection, I would say, for the reliability of the gearbox, but this went for performance. The other thing is the GT1 was a closed car. And so if you're out in the open, it was more like a single-seater. And that was something that personally I like, because you've got a view, you've got a feel, you've got a sense of everything around you. And it, for me, was pretty cool. It was like going back to your roots as a young driver when you're in a single-seater and exposed. So that was definitely one other factor. But to drive it, there was some keys that, with the prototype, it had bigger, wider tyres. And so therefore the tyre gave you more feedback and feel. And the final part was the fact that this had a different aerodynamic concept. The GT1 was for, I would say, efficiency. This was for downforce. It was for cornering speed. And definitely that you could feel immediately as you drive out the pits.
What is your impression? Was this reunion feelable for you? What was the emotion today?
It was super cool for many reasons, because driving the car was special. There is no question about it. But driving the car and seeing the people that we were so involved with the development of this, to be back just made it something unique in reality. And to have Bertie, as you mentioned, you know, tightening the belts again, or Jens plugging in, and all of this just, I would say, made me feel like a young racing driver. And that was something that I was so proud to be asked, for one thing. As you mentioned, you know, Bob was the first person to drive this car, and then I followed on at the end of the shakedown. And so, even though he's the one person missing, but I've got to say that even though he wasn't here, his spirit was definitely here. There is no question, and you can feel that through the DNA of the car as well.
Yes. But I have to say, you knew like 85 or 90% of the track still, and you haven't been driven it for 25 years. I mean, you didn't turn a lap afterwards anymore, right?
Yeah, the only problem was I was ready to turn right at one point when the road went left, but thankfully I worked that out. But it came back very, very quickly, because I hadn't driven a racing car for 10 years.
Yes.
And I was, if I'm very honest with you, I was a little bit nervous.
Really?
What it was like.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, my eyes are 10 years older, my reactions are 10 years older.
But it's like riding a bike. I mean, yeah,
I know, but
you're one of the famous, you know, most famous sports car drivers in history. You know, all these achievements, and you know.
In the history.
Yeah,
the word is the history. And now we're in the present. And so there was also the point that this is a special car. Yeah. And you want to give it some love and trust and respect, and to make sure that I did everything correctly. And so there was a little bit of, I would say, there was definitely excitement. There was a little bit of nervous anticipation. But all of that went as soon as I switched the speed lane limiter off and then rolled down the hill. And then after that, it was back to, I would say, normal life. Yeah.
I've seen your test report with all the points, what to improve. What was your impression, and what was in fact the improvements that you felt? Because reading through it is like so detailed, and at the time in '99, I think this was something maybe not unusual, I don't know, but something outstanding, I think, and it's something what Norbert Singer also mentioned. You know?
Well, I was and always have been, I would say, very much putting things down onto paper so that I don't forget. But also so other people don't forget. And I can say, hey, we need to keep pushing this. So I was very focused on that generally in my career. But probably the two things that stood out, and when I read the report, it came back to me, and there was one thing that did not sit in my mind until I drove the car. So the two things that stood out was the car was very reactive on the nose. As soon as I drove it, it turned, and it did everything I wanted. The GT1 before was a little bit lazy, it was a bit heavy, whereas this thing was alive. The other thing is that we had a turbo, flat six turbo with the GT1. V10 normally aspirated, the instant throttle response, it barked at you. And so you touch the throttle and there's a response and a reaction. And with the steering and the throttle response, then the car was on its toes. It's like a racehorse, it had the feeling that it just wanted to go. And both of those came straight back to me. The one thing which I had forgotten and made me smile was the first time I came down the straight, wide open throttle, changed fourth gear, fifth gear, and then into sixth. The noise just expands, it explodes. It's like a cacophony of noise just sitting there, and it's beautiful, absolutely beautiful. The sound of that V10 was stunning, absolutely stunning.
Das war streng geheim, ist richtig, und der Anstoß kam eigentlich nach dem Erfolg in Le Mans 98, dass man, wenn man wieder nach Le Mans kommt, ob dann der GT1 das richtige Fahrzeug wäre oder ein Prototyp oder ein LMP. Und wir haben da eine ganze Reihe von Vergleichsrechnungen angestellt und kamen zu dem Schluss, dass ein Prototyp bessere Chancen in Le Mans hat als ein GT1. Und zwar, der hatte einen etwas geringeren Verbrauch. Und was er aber hatte einen besseren Reifenverschleiß, sodass man annahm, kann Triple-Stint fahren, GT1 geht nur Doppelstint, und durch den Verbrauch könnte man vielleicht eine Runde später tanken. Insofern hat man sich dann entschieden, man will einen LMP machen.
Also wenn wir wieder nach Le Mans gehen, sollten wir das nicht 1999 tun, sondern sollten das im Jahr 2000 tun. Und so ist das Fahrzeug damals schon LMP, Le Mans Prototyp 2000 getauft und genannt worden. Wir haben ja anders als wie in den Vorjahren auch Motor und Getriebe neu entwickeln müssen. Da mussten Konzepte her, die im Detail dann entwickelt und dauerhaltbar gemacht werden mussten. Deswegen hat das ein bisschen länger gedauert und das erklärt auch, warum wir 1999 geskippt haben.
Ja, nun, es war klar, dass man einen offenen macht, weil der von Haus aus mehr Abtrieb hat, weil die Kanzel, die Kuppel zeugt eine Menge Auftrieb. Und es war klar, dass es offen sein muss. Und wir hatten im ersten Anfang ein, sage ich mal, konventionelles Modell gebaut, was wir aber nach einer Woche dann weggestellt haben und diese neue Struktur mit seitlichen Ausblasen von der Luft, die dann zum Teil durch Kühler gehen oder auch sonst frei rausgehen. Das gibt natürlich dann der Aerodynamik viel mehr Abtrieb auf die Vorderachse und auch insgesamt und in Summe war dann, glaube ich, 30% mehr Abtrieb. Allerdings am Anfang hatte der natürlich auch einen deutlich höheren Widerstand. An dem musste man dann heftig arbeiten, weil Le Mans ist ja auch ein Thema mit Widerstand.
Porsche war ja ich glaube 91 in der Formel 1 und hat sich dann zurückgezogen aus diesem Wettbewerb. Und der Motorsport war zu dem Zeitpunkt sehr klein. Wir durften 5 Motoren machen, natürlich nie in der Absicht, in diese Formel 1 zu gehen, aber das war halt damals schon so wie heute, glaube ich, auch noch im Motorenbereich, im Verbrennungsmotorenbereich der höchste Stand der Entwicklung und da durften wir uns dran versuchen. Dann haben wir so einen Motor gebaut und es ging dann so weit, dass wir diese Prototypen auf dem Prüfstand hatten. Sehr abgeschlossen, sehr geheim, sehr still, allerdings sehr laut. In Prüfstand 514 kann man sich daran erinnern, da gab es dann einen Motor, der, glaube ich, zum ersten und vielleicht sogar zum letzten Mal 15.000 Umdrehungen gedreht hat auf diesem Motorprüfstand. Wir hätten auch ein bisschen höher drehen können noch, aber der Prüfstand konnte nicht mehr. Und dann ist dieser Motor in so einem kleinen Schuppen hier entflacht, mit all seinen Teilen weggelegt worden, zur Seite gelegt worden. Wir wissen, ein kompaktes Motoraggregat sieht so und so aus, die Leistung, die ist so und so. Wir wissen die Zylinderzahl, wir wissen die Zündfolge, wir wissen, wie die richtige Kurbelwelle aussieht. Wir haben damals ja alles gemacht, wie der Nockenwelle anders, wir haben alles vorbereitet gehabt und sauber gemacht. Ich sage, lass uns dieses Paket doch nehmen und aufbauen. V-Winkel bleibt gleich, Blockhöhe wird ein bisschen größer und so ist aus diesem 3,5 Liter Motor, das war ja Formel 1 zu der Zeit, ein 5,5 Liter Motor Le Mans Motor geworden. Natürlich statt einem Kolbenring 3 Kolbenringe und diese Feinheiten, die man halt braucht im Langstreckensport.
Ja, und dann irgendwann im August, glaube ich, wurde das Projekt gestoppt. Und wir waren natürlich aus allen Wolken gefallen. Weil wenn Sie intensiv an einem Projekt arbeiten und Le Mans im Visier haben, und dann kommt jemand und sagt, es ist vorbei.
Ich denke, die Enttäuschung war extrem groß, ja. Bei mir war sie nicht so groß. Bei mich hat der Wiedeking immer schon, der war damals der Vorstandsvorsitzende, der hat gesagt, Amfrau, glaube ja nicht, dass du wieder nach Le Mans gehst. So im Vorbeigehen. Ne? Ich wusste, dass wir nicht hingehen. Egal, ich sage, Chef, lassen Sie uns dieses Auto machen. Wir brauchen das irgendwann. Irgendwann brauchen wir so eine Technologie. Wir brauchen Saugmotoren. Wir können nicht nur mit Turbomotoren im Rennsport rummachen. Und habe gesagt, ja, mach fertig. Aber du gehst nicht nach Le Mans.
Aber wir kamen noch eine Gnadenfrist, dass man ein Auto aufbauen darf. Weil es war zu der Zeit, wo das Projekt gestoppt wurde, hatten wir das Chassis noch gar nicht. Das kam dann, ich glaube, ein paar Wochen später. Und dann hat man also das erste Auto aufgebaut. Und so sind wir dann ziemlich genau vor 25 Jahren hier das erste Mal gerollt. Und das war's dann.
Ich war ja damals zu der Zeit, ich war ja Motorsportchef, ich war aber auch immer Motorentwicklungschef bis zu diesem Projekt. Da habe ich dann den Kollegen Bernd Rammler dann gehabt, der hat es dann weitergemacht, aber das ganze Formel-1-Projekt und was der Vorgeschichte war, es war ja eins meiner Babys, das sich über viele Jahre hinweg entwickelt hat. Und so gesehen freue ich mich riesig, ja, dass das jetzt stattfindet. Aber es gibt einen zweiten Grund, warum ich mich riesig freue, dass das heute stattfindet. Nämlich, wenn das wirklich heute fahren sollte, das Auto, ja, dann wird das erste Mal sein, dass ich es fahren sehe. Ich war halt wieder mal auf Dienstreise. Ich war irgendwo. Ich habe einen Anruf gekriegt, die Karre fährt und die Karre fährt gut, aber ich habe es nie fahren sehen.